About the last presentation, JN got affected there badly with a bit of technological glitching, but such is life. So I wanted to bring this to close. We're not actually, after this we're going to hear from Sarir Arami, who had a technical problem in his presentation yesterday, so we will get Sarir back on at 11 o'clock. He's primed and ready to go. The whole idea of this panel discussion was to try and assemble 5 surveyors who, between them, Peter Morgan online and 4 here, I'll get them all to introduce themselves.
Yeah, good idea, yes.
Who have a combined age of 400. And I think we ought to just try and prove that we've got 400. So, feeling your ages?
I'm 88.
And who are you?
My name is Jeffrey Kishani Wood, otherwise known as Mog.
Mog. Terry?
Terry Goldsworthy, and I'm actually 82 and I'm going to be 83 very soon.
Paul Homer, small craft surveyor, director of standards, and I'm 74.
Just a baby.
Yeah.
John Noble, I'm the real baby, I'm 72, and I'm what they call 74.
And Peter Morgan, are you an even babyer baby?
Good morning, I'm Peter Morgan, and I'm the youngster. I'm 70.
But at least
Hi.
I can see where this next 50 minutes is going to go. Right, so my job is to try and keep these guys in some semblance of order. I thought it would just be a fun way to end what's been a fascinating 23 hours. Most of these guys have not been aware of what's been going on, but for those of you who have been around on our program tonight, we've delivered some amazing presentations. And I want to just come back to something that's come through many of the presentations that we've delivered. And it comes back to competency, and it comes back to standards. So what I wanted to ask my panel is quite simply, what makes a competent supplier, in their opinion? And I would ask you to consider the mix of skills. So it's not just having that ability to go and look at a situation from a technical point of view, it's what happens then when you've got to come and write a report. But what makes a competent surveyor, Mom?
Well, I think you need a lot of technical knowledge, which can be obtained through study in colleges and so on, but you also need some training, at least 2 years in my opinion, or better 5, with an experienced surveyor. And it's not just about being able to tell a piece of rusty steel or rotten wood from good stuff, but also the consequences of both the rot, the rust, and the cost and consequences of repairing it or replacing it.
And at what point do you know you've become competent?
Oh, that's a difficult one to answer. I've been doing it now for a very long time, and I think I've just about completed my apprenticeship. And that's after, well, I started practicing as a surveyor in 1958, and I gave up when my wife died, and I retired in 2005. That's a fair long time. So I've just about completed my apprenticeship.
And we're honoured to have all that experience in the room as well. Kerry, what makes a competent surveyor? What makes a competent surveyor?
You need to be surveying what you know. Experience, like Mark says, is the biggest thing. Yes, you can come and work with us and get a certificate, which is a very good background indeed, and will give an insurance company a great deal of confidence. But you need to survey the kind of boat that you know, something that you've been on. If you've perhaps worked on a ship, then you should be working on them. If you've been in the boat trade, in the leisure boat trade, then that's where you should be doing your surveying. You should know what a good laminate looks like in a fiberglass boat, and that might require you to go and actually get signed up in a GRP company or GRP factory and actually do a bit with your own hands and know. But the vital thing is that you need to know honestly, straight and truthfully, and at a glance. So you go on, you go up to this boat, look at it like one of us would do from over there and say, well, it's got this problem with it, that problem with it. Tell you that, and have that, you can go and charge your money.
But what you're not saying is that someone can't develop new skills. because we'll talk a little bit about how a career develops. So you start at a base, then how do you then go and add new skills onto your core knowledge?
Well, it'll partly develop itself. That is, if you're out there surveying, you'll be talking to other surveyors, and you will occasionally get roped in to do this, that, or the other on some other variety of vessel that you haven't had to deal with before. I don't know, a barge on the Thames or a ship down at Southampton or something like that. And you will learn an awful lot each time you do it. But if you seriously want to change from being a surveyor doing leisure boats up at the marina and move into the very much more, much better paid shipping thing, then you're going to go and have to find a surveyor like old John, who lives just up the road from me. He does ships. And you're going to have to go and work with them for a while and get to see it hands-on and know, and get an actual feel for it, literally a feel for it.
Paul, let's not talk about complaints, because I've got a question in a minute about complaints. Let's just talk about what makes a competent surveyor in your opinion.
When he's done at least 6,000 surveys.
6,000.
You might laugh, but you see, today we don't have the training for people. They've never been in a boatyard for 5 years learning how to build a boat. And if you don't know that, how do you get the experience except by going out and doing it?
Yeah.
And if you pick on, as a lot of people do now, fiberglass, GRP only, they learn that and then can go to steel reasonably quickly. But to go to wood, it is a totally different craft.
Yeah.
And people do not realise it.
Yeah.
And that is why, to get a competent surveyor, it's easier from the old school, as Geoffrey knows, because he's done the training, than the modern people who go to college, can't get the experience, except by owning their own boat, and they think that's enough, and it isn't.
So one of the things that we often say is that you don't know what you don't know until
you find
it's
out.
too late.
Yes.
Yeah. And that is a big, big challenge and a big problem for people to understand. And I think Kerry made the point to work within your competency, stay with things that you're comfortable with and you know, be a specialist.
Yes, you can specialise, but you need the experience to specialise.
Yeah.
I've specialised on motor cruises for the last 10 years, and it makes life so much easier. But if I suddenly go back to a wooden boat, it'll take me 3 times as long, because I've got to go back into my memory and the way of thinking and the way of doing it.
And presumably then you get known as a specialist for certain types of boats, and then people say, oh, Paul Only, he's the man for those types of vessels.
That's right.
Yeah, so there is a benefit to
a
being
great
a
deal of benefit. And now I'm semi-retired, I only do a small quantity of those, but people know me for what I...
And therefore you can afford to pick and choose what you want to do.
Absolutely.
John, what makes a competent surveyor?
There are various factors involved in the area of the market I operate. The first is a competent surveyor must be independent, and it must have integrity. Without those, you're not competent. Once you've got those, and the clients, the customers are satisfied, they will decide whether you're competent or not. If you do a good job, they'll come back to you. If you do a bad job, they won't, and they won't even tell you. So at the end of the day, competency is not a matter of individual ability. It is a question of what the clients envisage your ability.
And of course, they won't come back and tell you, but they'll go and tell 10 other people how
yeah.
rotten you are.
I mean, word of mouth, even in the days of the computer, word of mouth is still very important.
Yes. Yeah. Peter, online, what makes a competent surveyor, Peter Morgan?
I agree with all the other comments from the other colleagues. But one of my big problems is surveyors who dabble and try and bluff their way through without the competent knowledge. They try and BS their way through the issues, and it's wrong. If they want to comment on a job or look at a job and survey, then have the competency and they've done it before and report on what they're seeing, not dabbling with all sorts of peripheral things and not looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point too. So Let me just move this on, Paul. I said I'd come back and we'd talk about complaints briefly. And I think it's very important to air this because sometimes people wonder what goes on at the IMS, I think. And one of the things, the most vexing part of my job really is complaints. They generally come usually in the UK. We don't get many from overseas. They are always small craft and they are generally to do with a pre-purchase survey where a surveyor, in the opinion of the person buying that boat, has done something wrong. So they write to us as their professional body. Can you just put a bit more flesh onto some of the things that we see? Because there are some things that keep occurring. So what are the issues?
The real issues, the biggest problem for surveyors, the surveying is one type of craft, if you like. Report writing is another. And most people can do engineering. They can't write the report on engineering, or they can write the report, but they don't have enough knowledge of the engineering. We're trying to say surveyors can do both. And that is where 90% of the problems occur. The surveyor's seen the problem on a boat, but he can't put it down in writing or forgets to put it in writing. And not putting it in the report, you've lost. It's as simple as that. You haven't done your job properly. And that is what we keep finding. We do also get people who think they know the job and don't write a report at all, in effect. They just waffle through it. A lot of them are just the information from the brochure, from the sales brochure, or manufacturer's brochure. You hear all this and it looks lovely, and the purchaser doesn't know anything about boats. You can guarantee that to a small craft. So they read this blurb and think it's wonderful. But when they suddenly find out things aren't working, then they start complaining. They come to us. And then we look at it and say, well, there's nothing in this report. It's badly written and it hasn't any facts. Therefore, the client for him is right. Our surveyor is wrong. Now, trying to defend him, which is what we do our best to do, and tell him the best way to get out of a problem, and the first way to get out of it is face your client and go and see him straight away, within 24 hours if possible. Because if you talk to him straight away, the animosity is gone. You can get to a compromise. If you're a character, which is another problem we do have in surveying, that a lot of them will say, well, I'm right. To hell with you. I'm going to ignore you. Well, then you've got a very big problem. And that is where we get involved because they haven't discussed it. And the letters that Mike's getting are very rude, to the point. He sends them to me to look at, and I say, oh dear, we can't win.
You can't.
So we then have to try and persuade him to go to his insurers and get it sorted. Some people won't even speak to Mike. So it's nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
And we're not prepared for that from anybody anymore. We have changed the rules to stop that because we're only there to help. That's all this organisation is. And if we get told it's nothing to do with us, I don't think you want to be a member.
Yeah, I agree.
Can I just interject for a second, please, Mike and team?
Please do.
As you know, this is Mike Wall here. As you know, I've written various modules on report writing, and I mark many assignments from the students submitting them. Unfortunately, not from IMS, but other organisations. And I have to say that at least 80% of them, on the first attempt, I have to fail. They're absolutely useless. And then again, on the second attempt, not many of them again can do it properly. Basically because they don't listen, they don't read the module, and they don't want to listen to their superiors, their elders, or what have you, and learn from them. And we all know, you've already mentioned it, that the way to actually become skilled, particularly in marine surveying, is for a young surveyor to join an expert like you guys on the panel here, and to work with an expert for a number of years, and if necessary for free, and then learn the profession and learn how to write a report. Our product is the report. It's what the client is paying for.
It's your intellectual property at the end of the day. That's what we live on.
Exactly. But not only that, if they don't get it right, okay, what they're doing is they're never going to get your work again. That's the first thing. And secondly, because we are the organizations, we're the people who are teaching them, if we pass them, and let them get away with those crap reports, then it's reflecting on us. And I will never allow somebody to go through with a crap report. I will always fail them. Sounds hard, but that's the fact of life.
It's about standards at the end of the day. And this, this links in very nicely to the next point I've got on my list here, which is, Mark?
Before you leave that, I've got a file in my office called Other Surveyors Reports, and I read them. And the one thing that strikes me is the number of them who can't write proper English.
Absolutely.
Their grammar and means of writing all up the creek. So it's that where they fail.
So what you are saying and proving again is that just having that technical ability
is not
without the
It's not enough.
writing a competent report.
exactly.
Means that you will always struggle as a surveyor.
Doesn't mean to say you've got to have a first-class honours degree in English, but you should be able to write good, clear English, correct grammar, correct spelling.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Just to pull into that one, if you can't do that, employ somebody that can do it.
Yeah.
It's really difficult.
Yeah.
There are people out there who know good English, and if you've done your report, send it to them to read for you and crit. Once they've done that, you're all right.
I have that with my students, and I'll say to them, before you put in your next paper, take it to somebody who speaks good English and doesn't edit it for you.
Yes.
Because I get foreigners who aren't,
yes. It's worth pointing out we have two gentlemen here, in John and Perry, who sit on the IMS Education Committee. And I wanted to move into that because this is very, very relevant, and it's where Mike was heading with his question. So we have two successful award-winning now professional qualifications, we can say. We were given an award last year for our work in that area, which is wonderful. So it's fine. We currently have 160 plus students in that program. Kerry, you see their work coming through. John, you see their work coming through. You've authored modules. So I think the quality of the modules that IMS offers is of a high standard. And I think that is recognised in the industry. So have we set the bar too high?
No.
No.
Right?
No.
And how important is it not to lower the bar?
Very important.
Do not lower the bar at all costs. What we need to do is try and persuade the people to go into it, go down to the marina, or get in touch with what they want to go. And if somebody who was perhaps thought himself as surveying, well, fiberglass boats, was billions of them along the coast here. He can go to any of the yards. If you walked in the door and asked the managing director if he could have a look round, they'd be pleased to see him and they'd help him. Might give him a bucket of fiberglass and give him a chance.
John?
The whole issue of the report as a product is quite correct. But we do have to understand as surveyors what the report is going to be used for. Now, when I was a youngster, we were always told, assume that all your reports are going to end up in court or arbitration.
Yes.
And that was a benchmark. Now, I would have to say that out of the 1,000 surveys, 2 might actually end up in court, maybe 4 or 5 in arbitration. But at the end of the day, it is important that the surveyor understands what the client wants and needs the report for.
Yeah, it's good advice. It's good advice. So all of this, I think, brings us back to mentoring. And you can teach people in a classroom, you can teach people distance learning, but you're only teaching theory. So the practical element is important and the mentoring is important. Peter Morgan, who mentored you in your younger days when you were just a strip of a lad?
Good question. Nobody. And that's one of the problems in my particular role. We don't have mentors. I've not had anybody, only one, I think, in my whole career, of somebody wanted to come round with me to do a survey or whatever. It's pardon the expression. It's an area that all you can do is learn it on the job. You're thrust into the deep end and comes with experience. And then obviously then training with textbooks, with various courses, etc. But normally, most of the guys didn't want to do it.
So, coming back into the room, who mentored you guys?
Well, in my case, I served an apprenticeship in the shipyard and got to know the Lloyd surveyor, who was a regular visitor, and unofficially, he mentored me. Some of his language was a bit coarse, but I don't blame him looking back. But no, I learned it the hard way with hands-on, using the hammer and chisel and adze whatever in order to do the work. And I can now look at a ship, a steel ship, and read the steel structure just like a book.
Yeah.
Because somebody took the trouble to teach me.
Yeah. Kerry, you mentioned
I was
you.
apprenticed in an old-fashioned shipyard as well, so I worked in that particular yard. I worked on timber vessels, steel vessels, aluminium vessels. Not well, we did do some fiberglass ones. They were minesweepers, but it wasn't the same thing at all. But anyway, as I feel very strongly about mentoring, and Barney Sollers came and sat in my house for half a day the other day, and he derives so much benefit from it. It's not so much the information that you give them or telling them where to look or things like that. It's the fact that there's somebody there holding their hand, somebody that they contact, somebody they can relate to, who puts the whole thing into a context and into perspective, that they're not sitting in a room at home somewhere in North Wales or something, looking at a great pile of papers which they find hard to even read. So yes, strong on the mentoring, and I'm very strong on asking Catherine all the time, you've got a new student, talk to him, even if, never mind me anything about the bloody books or not, but talk to the students, so that they've got a contact.
Yeah.
I have some advice in the up mine.
Who mentored you, Paul?
Well, I did an apprenticeship with Rolls-Royce
Yeah.
when I was 16. So that was my background into engineering.
Yeah.
I then ran my own garages, so I learned lots of bits and pieces. We had wooden cars in those days as well to repair. So you learn a little bit. Then I went to work for a big marina group where I was repairs manager for 15 years. Well, you learn a hell of a lot very quickly because we had 20 staff there to look after and repairing wood, steel, fiberglass. And you pick it up, besides just being like sitting in an office, I was there hands-on doing the job as well. And that's where I learned it from.
Well, can I interrupt again? I'll give you one little example. You can tell a man, if you hit a piece of steel with a hammer, you can tell whether it's sound or whether it's just tin plate. He can listen to you and say, yes, I understand that. But the best thing to do is to stand him in a shipyard, make him take a hammer and hit the plate and say, that's what you're listening for.
Yeah.
You can't tell him what he's listening for, but when he hears the sound, he knows.
Yeah. So, John, just to turn this on its head, I know several people cite you as their mentor. One or two quite high-profile surveyors with the organisation, including the current president, would regard you as a mentor. So what do you offer them, do you think, as a mentor?
Well, let me go back to what you mean by mentoring, because there is learning surveying through peer accompaniment. You go with senior surveyors, but mentoring is actually something completely different. And what I do is I've got a few years' experience surveying and running a surveying company. And I offer to the president, Zarir Rani, the ability for him to come and chat to me behind the scenes. If he has an issue. I go out to their office at least once a year. I can see how it's operating. And if things are not going as well as I think it should, you can have a little quiet word in his ear. You don't have to do a song and a dance. And so mentoring is different from surveying, learning. So what I'm doing is applying my experience, while it still has some value, to those who are in the business doing the day-to-day operation.
So I want to pick you up on one very important point that I'd like to hear from all of the panellists about, whilst it's still current, is you made that phrase there, you made that comment, So let's just talk about currency in the marketplace and CPD, continuing professional development. First of all, how important is CPD? We don't make it mandatory at the Institute. Captain John Lloyd and I spoke about this from North Institute, and I spoke about this yesterday morning. Neither of our organisations make it mandatory, and yet we believe it is a very, very valuable thing to do. So, Peter Morgan, let me ask you, CPD. What are your views on CPD?
I think CPD is vitally important. In fact, we introduced the revised scheme during my presidency, and we simplified it to bring in more, a bigger spectrum of where people can learn things. A journal, if a guy reads a journal of his own particular field, then that's useful. He's gaining knowledge. And that's what the key is, get knowledge. And then they can use that in their career and do whatever they want. I think it's absolutely crucial that CPD is promoted, undertaken, and recorded.
Gentlemen,
all the legal teams make it mandatory. They have to do CPD.
They do.
You're talking about updating information and access to information and learning from information.
It's all of those things. I stood up in public, and I'm not ashamed to tell you and everybody else, because I've done this in public. I have questioned surveyors who've been doing this job for 15, 20, 30 years, that they perhaps have not, some of them, progressed beyond the skills they knew 15, 20, 30 years ago. Are they still competent now?
No. Well, the point there is that if they're dealing with FRP, GRP, that has moved along at a steady pace.
Yeah.
The other thing is that on ships, tankers and the like, they are now rigged throughout, or many of them are rigged throughout with computer system and applications that not only check the strength and stresses of the ships, but also will give you an instant readout about the height of the centre of gravity. They do it by the roll period. That I sometimes write for students, explain that to them. I'm going to add a bit to the unit for some time, but I've never got round to it. The biggest one, or most frightening one, is paints and corrosion and all that, because that moves on at a frightening pace. Yeah. And what was right last year isn't necessarily right this year. The only good side to that is that they can go on to Wikipedia or onto the actual manufacturer's sites and instantly get readouts of what the latest thing is and how to apply it. Otherwise, I don't know. We can't rewrite the corrosion thing, which we'll talk about.
Well, it's a very big thing. Man, Paul, CPD.
Very important indeed. It shows that the surveyor's interested in his job. Now, if you haven't got CPD or not keeping up, there must be a problem. And has he just joined to do half a dozen surveys a year to make a few bob, which we do have a few members like that, or are you serious and want a career? If you need a career, you've got to get CPD. It's the only way to prove that you're learning.
Yeah. I agree entirely with what Peter said, actually. He hit the nail on the head. He's quite correct. The other thing that if by chance you were called to be an expert witness in court, one of the things that the council will ask you is, do you keep up your CPD? If you say no, the judge will write in his book in judge speak, this surveyor is a twerp. But if you say yes, I go to this, go to that, go to the other, read this book regularly, that magazine, then he'll write down in his book, this man knows what he's talking about.
And might be exonerated if he's found to be deficient somewhere.
Yes,
that
indeed.
Might help in his defence.
Yes, indeed. It's a good defence.
Yeah.
I do keep up with my CPD.
Yeah. However, on this occasion, I had a bad day, and my CPD didn't save me. John, CPD.
I probably have a slightly different view of CPD. It is in danger of becoming, and I don't mean with this institute, but with overall, a tick box exercise. And that defeats the whole purpose of developing your knowledge. CPD is a record of you trying to develop. It is not the be all and the end all, in my opinion. It has to, if you just tick lots of boxes and say to the judge, there's my CPD, he doesn't know if you're any good or not at doing the actual work.
Yeah.
So it is a tick, it must not become a tick box exercise. It must become a tool that the surveyor and practitioner can use to bring his knowledge forward and indeed up to date.
That's why I recommend all small craft surveyors go to the quarterly training sessions we have. It's amazing how many of them don't.
Yeah. But those who do, gain
Those that do learn
huge
something.
value from those. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And they're less likely to become in front of us as discipline.
Well, that's true. That is true. I'm just conscious of time, but a couple of things I do want to get through. Can I ask each of you to recall an anecdote that might prove a valuable surveying point? Is that something that you can share with me?
I can recall two very important ones. One concerned a Dutch barge which had been surveyed by a man I know to be a competent surveyor. The owner decided he wanted to do a lot of repairs on it, put it in dry dock, shot blasted the rubbish off the outside to find that all the way around the waterline, the boat was very badly pitted. He hadn't taken off the paint over the outside. He hadn't seen it, and he said the boat was okay. It wasn't. On that same boat, I've got a picture of my hammer sticking up through the keel with water pouring out all round. Now, if you looked at the boat, you could see that that hole, when the surveyor saw it, was on the keel block. He could not possibly have seen it, but he didn't write in his report, I could not see behind the keel blocks. As I drove home, I thought to myself, Jeffrey, you don't write that either.
Yeah.
It's in there now.
Yeah.
And on another occasion, when I was an apprentice, we had a wooden ship in which we renewed one of the bilge stringers. And we renewed it in Canadian rock elm, which is a very fine timber, long, straight grain, but it has a tendency to develop rot. And we finished the job, and we were expecting the surveyor to come that afternoon, when one of the shipwrights who was helping said, I won't translate his northeast coast dialect, but he said, this piece of wood is rotten. When we looked at it, sure enough, close up to the bulkhead, the brand new piece of timber had a big patch of rot in it. The charge hand said, come on boys, put your tool bags and bags over it, and we did that. The surveyor came down, looked along the thing, said, yes, that's fine. I had often wondered whether he got done for incompetence, and every time I ever found a pile of clothes on top of the spot, I'd say, I want that moved, I want to come leave.
Yeah, good.
Both experience.
Any other anecdotes?
There you go. I was standing in court, I don't know, 7 years ago or something like that. I was representing a manufacturer, and he was being sued by a bloke who bought a boat from him. He'd had the boat for about 5 years, and he now wants all his money back because he said the boat was deficient. And two things about it. The first thing is that the judge took every word I said as absolute gospel. But I said, wait. The other thing, which wasn't nearly so good, is that the other bloke, of course, was very wrong as well. So the judge said, let's have both these surveys, and went away around the back door. God, I thought, what is it? He found something that I failed to see. And then happily, he came back in again and said, these two surveys was actually the same. And but the point is that these surveys are legal, serious documents.
Yes.
And
you can't just flannel through them, that won't do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, good advice.
Anecdote.
Peter, have you got any nice little anecdotes for us?
He's muted.
Oh, Peter, you're muted. Can we unmute Peter? Peter, can you unmute yourself?
Sorry about that, yes.
Any other
The
anecdotes?
fourth rail bridge. Wonderful. If you remember a little while ago in the early 90s, it was in the press that the bridge was falling apart. Lumps falling off it, and it was rusting away while everybody was watching it. I actually got commissioned by Railtrack to do the survey of that bridge. And all it was the paint falling off because it hadn't been maintained for over 20 years. The actual structure was absolutely virtually pristine. We only landed up putting in about a 250 ton in global terms of steel, and that was only down at the sea level because that had rotted away because of the nature of the beast there. But the actual structure was in remarkable condition. So don't believe everything you're being told.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Until you go and look at it,
Yeah,
examine it, and then come to your conclusion by whatever means you're using.
yeah. Thanks, Peter.
Can I just add one observation? It's not an anecdote as such, but there's one fundamental, basic rule in marine surveying is the priority always is safety of life.
Absolutely.
Nothing, even the environment, must not get over that. Safety of life is everything.
Yeah, we should underline that as well, John. I think very, very
Very
important.
valid.
Very important.
You only have to attend a court of inquiry for it to come home to you and have to give evidence of that. I had the instance of a paint sprayer being killed inside a double bottom tank. It's the most unpleasant thing I've ever encountered.
Yeah, no, it's miserable, isn't it? Horrible.
Okay, what John's saying.
Yeah. I want to ask each of you, what is the most disruptive change? The one thing that you have seen over your time in the marine sector, maritime world, in your careers? What is the one most disruptive change you think that has affected the way this business operates? There's the curveball.
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, Kerry, go for it.
Right then,
Legislation.
when I first started out, you had a clipboard and a double pencil and a torch, and a screwdriver, and you went down there and stood on a bit of cold hard. Nowadays, you can get a digital camera or a video camera, and you can get speech recognition, and that makes a very large difference to writing up the report, which was misery in the clipboard days, because what you'd written there when you were crawling about in the bloody buildings, you couldn't read anymore. You got and you had to go through, write it all out in biro, legible, and then take it to some nice lady who was willing, either because you were married to her or something else, to type it up. Nowadays, it's not like that, and it will come out in computer format, and therefore the judge and the people who are looking at it are going to look at it and see something in a computer format. It needs to be in a tidy, presentable format. As to actual changes in the actual production of boats, in Britain, timber boats have largely gone out, not in Asia, where they make hundreds of leisure boats, huge numbers of them. And you do also have to remember that every single boat that's out there, fiberglass, steel, aluminium, whatever, has timber components built into it. So that is a change. Otherwise, the changes aren't so very great, really.
Let's see if the rest disagree with you.
Yeah,
Jeffrey.
I would agree with that entirely, except that I would add one other point as far as computers are concerned. The worst thing that was ever invented on a computer was cut and paste.
oh, indeed.
On that subject, Mike, can I comment that be very, very careful with your notes. They are, if you're getting involved in any court work or litigation work, all your notes can be interrogated, and even the scribblings on the back of a fag packet. It's all admissible and can be a thing. And we had in recent arbitration a very interesting one, where we believed that my opposing surveyor had a document that we thought he had instructing him to do something. We managed to prove by having his computer taken off him, his hard disk sent to an expert for interrogation, and the document was found in there in the hard disk. Be very, very careful.
The human memory has got an awful lot to say for itself. My notebooks were very well kept, and I could understand them perfectly. in all the years of surveying that I did, I only ever had to produce my notebook once in court, and that was in Canada. And they had to be notarized, etc. But the biggest change over the years has been, as was mentioned, the move from paper and pencil to computer. And I think, in fact, that's a bad thing because people then forget to remember.
Paul?
Yeah, well, following on from that, the biggest problem I'm seeing is tick box reports. They are not really a report because they don't give enough information. So if you're going to go and do a tick box report for pre-purchase survey and something is wrong, it's either on that piece of paper or it's never been there. And you are condemning yourself very quickly because you can't put a caveat in to cover yourself. And that is where a lot of these problems are going to start coming from in the next few years.
I'm conscious of time. We're moving rapidly towards the end. Kira, you're clutching a couple of books there. So I would like to ask, what resources would you recommend to surveyors? I know you think this is an amazing book. Please introduce
First
it.
of all, I do a number of the units besides this one, the naval architecture and stability. But many of the students stumble on this because they're not used to doing arithmetic and mathematics. This little book, which you can't really see, I suppose, I don't know. That little book came out originally in 1908. It's been written up for a number of times, or rewritten a number of times, and it's extremely, well, it's just the right book for a person who's going to do naval architecture of the surveying. It's written in a manner which you will be able to understand. It's written in words that ordinary people can follow along, and there is nothing second-rate about it. It's got all the stuff in it as good as you could possibly get. Comes from Warsash Publishing, down in Warsash Publishing, but you're going to have to dig about there because it went out of print a few years ago. And here's another one. This book has just come on the market in the last 6 months, and well, I think there was an earlier version of it actually was coming. And again, you can buy it on Amazon or on the web, and it is absolutely brilliant. But it is not written as easily to read as that one is. It is much more something that a guy who was doing a first-class honours in naval architecture would have. But nonetheless, everything you could possibly want to know is in there. That's a good thing. I don't know other kinds of books. If you're doing fiberglass boat, you go to Plessy. I don't know. Again, in naval architecture, people do Barnaby and Tupper. It's good. Do go on the web. Do go on Amazon. Do go in second-hand books and type in naval architecture or aluminium boat construction or whatever you think, and you will get a list of second-hand books that are available, sometimes for a fiver or something like that. More often for 100 quid, but all the same, you can get relatively cheap, good books, which you, as a surveyor, will still have on your shelves long after you've retired. They are well worth it. Go on there, find books. Read enough resources. Don't just take the IMS handbook and assume that that told you everything you want to know. It is just one point to start. Then research from on there.
Can I just show a picture? One of the issues that people complain about is health and safety. If you look carefully at that, that is how surveys were conducted on damaged ships not that long ago. It goes back to the safety of life point, but also we mustn't cry down the health and safety officials too much, because when you see this photograph, you can see why they have a point.
I would agree entirely with you on that. When I was an apprentice, it was quite common for rivet boys to throw a sparkling white hot rivet 30, 40 feet for somebody to catch it in a bucket.
They bloody well did. That's how you do it. It went all the way from down there, all the way up there, all the way down there. Quite hot rivets come flying off.
And unfortunately, on one occasion, one hit the bucket edge, bounced off a bulkhead, and went down between a man's shirt and his back. needless to say, he suddenly learned to speak Blackpool French.
I saw that same thing happening. It's straight on his shirt, and fortunately, he just went forward. He went sizzle, straight out
Peter, one invaluable reference source you might offer up?
Yeah, the book that we recommend, Corrosion by the American Bureau of Shipping, which we have the exclusive use of in our course manual, our diploma course. It is superb.
Thank you.
And it's electronic.
Even better. So to conclude this panel discussion, gentlemen, thank you ever so much for coming in and taking time to be here, and Peter for being online. I think this has been really, really valuable to pull from the many, many years of experience and the life stories that you guys have got. So I'm very, very appreciative, and thank you ever so much. I want to just end this. Can I ask each of you, what one piece of advice would you pass on to the next generation of surveyors coming through now?
Ooh. That's a very difficult one to answer.
What's a curveball, deliberately, Morgan?
Yeah, I would say if you're going to start as a surveyor, get yourself a good mentor who will train you, as well as doing the theoretical stuff. You need practical advice on how to do it.
Go and work in a boatyard. That's the best advice I can give. Because if you do yourself 5 years, when you're young or just out of college, you don't need your money. Go and do that, because after you've done that, you can become a successful surveyor and earn a lot of money.
Yeah.
But you've got to do it the hard way first. You can't expect the money, which a lot of people do, without the practice.
Yeah.
You'll get in a boatyard and learn.
Yeah.
Best thing I can say there is here.
Yes. I'm afraid I'm going back to safety of life. My advice to any surveyor of any genre: make sure when you're entering a space that you know you can breathe once you're in it.
And
We are still getting death by entry into enclosed spaces without proper monitoring of the oxygen content.
In the double bottom there was a burner, a welder, and a corker. You could hear the corker over the other side of Southampton, never mind in there. When I came out, I could not hear anything at all.
Yeah. No, John, I think that's very, very valuable. Peter, one from you?
Don't be blinkered. Look at the bigger picture and take everything into account. Don't just focus on little items. There's all sorts of factors will come into your report.
See the big picture, in other words.
Yes.
Yeah. Gentlemen, that's a wrap, as they say, so thank you all very, very much.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Pleasure. Thank you.
to see you. Get a new contact.
I hope we can reconvene this panel maybe in 1 year's time when we come round to the second Survey International.
I can't guarantee that I'll be here, but
You're good for time, yeah.
We're always around on the end of the phone if people need help.
Well, I was going to ask, and I know Jeffrey does this because occasionally I'll ring Jeffrey. So I've got this young surveyor who's joined us. He's doing narrow boats on the Thames. We're doing on the Thames actually. Yeah. Would you mind helping him? And you've done that a couple of times, and it's just knowing that somebody can send a report to Jeffrey and say, "Oh, just have a look at this, please, Jeff, and what do you think?" And he can critique it. And I think you even went out with Ben and did a couple of surveys with him. Yeah. So fantastic. I mean, you can't ask for more than that. So I think what we will do is when we send down this information, we'll include these guys' email addresses. And if you want to bounce anything off them, then they're here and happy to help. So thank you very much.
The National Corrosion Service, Mike, actually runs a helpline.
Sorry,
we should perhaps do the same. The National Corrosion Service runs a helpline, which is free.
Are you volunteering?
A telephone call. Sorry?
Are you volunteering, Peter?
Well, I'm doing the one for the National Corrosion Service.
Okay, we don't have time for any questions, I'm afraid, now, but we will let you have the email addresses of these fine gentlemen, and thank you very much indeed.
Yogi Peter Bach.
Have you been here all night?